Hello again and welcome to another episode of the Franchise Everything podcast. I'm Glenn Walford and here talking about everything and anything in franchising. We're once again today at the Pack and Send head office in Sydney and we're with franchise owner Raman Swaminathan. Now, Raman, you own, or you're with partners with 3 franchises. So it's North Sydney, Castle Hill and Crow's Nest in Sydney. That's right. All right. Got them all. Yeah. There's a few there to remember, mate. So well done. Thank you for joining us today, mate. We're going to talk about your franchise owner journey here within Pack and Send. Yeah. So where to begin? You're obviously not, if through our chat there, you're not originally from Australia. You're from India. Tell me about where you've come from, where it all started to come over here to Australia.
Okay. I come from essentially the south of India, where I'm a native of South India, but I'm not essentially born and brought up there. I was born and brought up in the eastern side of the country, which was in Calcutta, which is basically what I say is, so that gave me a different side of the thing. So I was a South Indian from the east of India. So
a South Indian from the east
of India. So the languages play a very different role in India. And it's very interesting because, you get to learn the language. India always follows a 3-language formula, which is kind of English, Hindi, and the state language.
Yes.
So for me, it was a good thing because I started off learning Bengali, English, and Hindi. And then from there, after having graduated in commerce from the University of Calcutta, I moved to New Delhi. Having moved to New Delhi, I did my postgraduate diploma in computer applications and stuff, and then I started taking up some odd jobs.
So you have a commerce and IT sort of educational background. Yeah.
Correct. And then IT was actually the thing that was picking up in those very days. You still had the talk of that. Yeah. So IT was something influencing a lot of people. Having a computer was unthinkable. But
we're talking late 80s?
This was early 80s.
Early 80s.
Okay. Early 80s.
Yep.
And then I came to, then I started, I took up a job as a transcriber in a media outlet. And what that gave me an opportunity was to translate some interviews from different
with all those languages
into English.
Yeah.
And we were coming out with this monthly video news magazine called News Track, and it was very interesting. And
cutting edge for the time, video news magazine.
Correct. And it was, we used to bring out a monthly video news magazine from a reputed publication of India. So it was pretty good. And once I got that opportunity, I couldn't believe it. Within 3 months of my joining, I actually had the opportunity to go and interview some people, politicians and stuff. And then when one Indian Prime Minister was assassinated back in 1991, I was told to actually fly to the bloody destination and actually cover the events unfolding.
So you became a journalist like that.
And yes, and so it was I was just thrown into the field, and it was an absolutely wonderful opportunity. I would say I was brimming with confidence, nervousness at the same time.
What was that experience like? I mean,
first of all,
because you didn't know much basically about journalism then, so you sort of had no fear?
I knew exactly what goes into it because it was going to be multiple feeds coming from different parts of the country with so much activity happening in the country with the assassination of a prime minister. And then what happens is that I had to go to a certain part of the country and get the feel and from the thing. So it was for me interacting with the people. There was the issue of safety and making sure that I was actually doing a good job, because that would all piece together into a big story from across the network and then get shown about. But it was a great opportunity. I had the confidence of an experienced cameraman and a sound recordist with me,
guiding
me and telling me what to do, what takeaways, what cutaways, what to do with the thing, what piece to camera and stuff like that. So it was pretty good experience overall. But I wasn't totally new, because within the 3 months, I always kept my eyes and ears open. I'm someone who plays by the thing. I try to observe a job from start to finish. I try to understand what is involved. What is the net objective? What are we trying to do? How are we doing it? Are we doing it right? There are ways and things how we can improve a functioning. So these little things, when I try to piece together, I just don't try to do a certain job that I would do just for myself.
So that really paved the way. Yeah. And you were saying that also that you had the opportunity, which I love cricket, so I got excited when I heard
Yes, so I moved from politics. Into sports, and how I moved was basically I went to interview a cricketer.
Who was
it was Kapil Dev.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I was talking to his business partner, And when I was talking to a business partner, he said, look, I'm also looking for a person who can actually fill in. And I'm trying to bring out a sports video news magazine. And I said, oh, wow, that's great. And the conversation turned into a job offer. And I took it on as a challenge. And I said, I'm going to go into it. And I got in. And then, within no time, I had the opportunity to go with Kapil Dev as a part of the first Indian cricket team's visit to South Africa post-apartheid. And India were the first cricket team to open. And I actually, when I went there, I couldn't believe it.
Tour. It was, very historical tour.
Yeah, and it was not only that, I had the opportunity to see Nelson Mandela face to face. And I just couldn't believe what I was going through. It was a dream come true. But I tried to stay grounded. It was too early in my career for me to sort of float.
To get too big-headed about everything.
And I sort of, but gave me immense confidence talking to people, doing things, observing what people are doing differently. And some of the great blokes I met during that time was Harsha Bogle, a well-known cricket commentator. And he was somebody who guided me in that thing. And as a part of that visit. So we were all together. And then, I came out of media. The business went bust with Kapil Dev's partner going down. And so then I had the opportunity to sort of either stay back in the media. There were only a couple of media houses which were doing video journalism. I had the choice of either going into print journalism or sort of stay with the video. But the video wasn't too promising for me. So I then said, and with the odd work hours, I wasn't really cut out for that. I'm not a late night person.
You didn't want the late nights, you didn't want the long hours.
Correct,
You want a more 9
I'm
to 5
basically
type of thing?
very 9 to 5. I'm very disciplined. I try to wake up early. I try to go to bed early. So I'm sort of that sort of a person.
So what was the move from there? What was
from there? I went into a diplomatic mission. I used my computer skills. And this diplomatic mission was actually in New Delhi, was wanting to, computerize their inventory records. And it was all about maintaining and a whole network of inventory for their expat staff, which was all furnishings and everything related to the office. And when I got in, I sort of said, okay, I have a software which I have to work on and update. I got that opportunity. I didn't really have to develop the software. The software was being developed by a team, and I had to maintain that software and put all the data behind it. So I got into that. I took up that job on a contract basis. And again, as I said, thanks to my confidence or whatever, the job became a permanent job, and I became a materials management officer. And from there
was in the consulate?
In the High Commission of Canada in New Delhi.
So the Canada High Commission.
Canadian High Commission in New Delhi. And I was there for 7 years. And from there, I got roped in by the Dutch embassy because we were doing certain things right at the Canadian High Commission because we had to liaise with the government of India on a lot of issues. And the Dutch were next door, and they had called me for a party, and I was one of the invitees. And again, during a conversation, I had friends in the other consulates and high commissions, and they offered me a job. And they said, why don't you consider moving to us? If you can, if we can match your salary or your expectations, would you mind working for us? It was the same working conditions, same working. It was just that working for a different government. And for me, it didn't really matter because I'm neither a diplomatic passport holder. I'm basically just a locally engaged staff.
So it wouldn't really make much difference.
It didn't matter. So I moved into the Dutch embassy. I worked with them for 5 years. The Canadians did offer me and said, why don't you move to Ottawa? When a lot of my friends from the High Commission were actually moving down to Toronto or Ottawa and settling there. And I said, I didn't want to work in the freezing temperatures of Ottawa.
You were saying before this, you were too cold in Canada for you.
Too cold for me.
Well, what's the normal temperature where you were in India?
Oh, it was temperate, very normal. Delhi used to go to a dip to about 4 degrees centigrade or 3 degrees during the
People
winter
probably
times.
know that,
And from there to about 30, 35 degrees, but now it's gone to 40, 45. So it's a different world.
For all sorts of reasons.
So
Canada's probably a lot warmer now.
Yeah, I know. And then came to Dutch, and then my sister and brother-in-law who were in Australia had moved from Africa to Australia, Sydney, and my parents came and stayed with them for a year. They loved it. They came back and they said, Australia is a great place. It's nice and stuff like that. And my brother-in-law, Shankar, said, why don't you consider moving to Australia and we can help you gain a foothold That's what you need when you move to a new country.
Yeah.
And I was married. I had a daughter who was just about 4 or 5. And so I said, I lodged my application. And within a year, I ended up getting my permanent residency.
And what year was that?
That was 2004.
Okay, permanent resident in Australia.
2004. Early in 2004, I got my visa, and I said, now that we've got the visa, there's no looking back. We have spent some money getting the PR. Let's go. So we booked ourselves to come here in the month of April. And 2004, we came in, and I left my wife and daughter here with my sister. And I said, we'll find her a school. We put her into a school. And my wife said, I'll look for a job. You go back, you wind up, and come back. So I went back. I had to settle my parents into a house in South India. We moved from Delhi back to South India. Pretty interesting journey. And then I got here by August or September.
How daunting was the move? Were you really excited about it? Were you a little bit daunted by?
I was, one, because I was leaving them at a stage when probably they needed me a bit.
Yep.
But then they were also capable of living on their own. And we had a foothold in the South, and I had another sister in South India. So she was there close by.
Yep.
So if there was anything for them to fall back on, it was all. But for me, it was about establishing myself, and I have a daughter just 4 or 5 and growing up, and she's got a future ahead of her. So I have to look for them. I have to work for them. So I said, let's take this move now. This is the best time. So we moved here. Came here, I looked for a job. It took me a while to actually get in there, and 5 months or so. And I landed up with IBM. And
so you use your IT and commerce
IT, and they basically gave me a contract job as in their customer fulfillment area of their software side, which was the mainframe software. And I had no clue. But again, as I said, it was essentially confidence and the ability to get things done was my forte, is what I will say. And I just got in, learned the job, and understood, made friends. We had IBM was a multicultural workplace, so it wasn't really that difficult gelling or mingling into the crowd, so to say.
Yep.
But the team were pretty sporting, nice. And when I got that offer, I took it on. And within 1 year, I was like in a team of about 5 or 6 people who were far more experienced than me, who have been there with IBM for about 5 or 6 years or more. I was the newest one, and I ended up becoming their kind of team leader.
Yep.
And being made a subject matter expert on that particular style working of the software customer fulfillment.
What was the solution?
It was basically a customer mainframe software customer. So it was the mainframe computers of the IBM. They have customer fulfillment. They work with various multinationals like the NAB and ANZ Bank and Credit Union, the Defense Ministry and the government here. And they provide the softwares for that. So there are a lot of upgrades and softwares that they keep tending to buy for their mainframe computers.
Yeah. So how long? So that was, you were at IBM
was
for a
about
number of
2004 to 2009.
Yeah.
But within that time, I had the chance of visiting a number of countries, working with the project teams in Japan, in Malaysia, training their Center of Excellence staff. It was a wide variety of roles that I did within that short time. And then I became an ANZ program manager for the sales and distribution wing in the storage cells. And then we had this, then we were just during one of these discussions, and we are seeing so many layoffs happening in the industry. That was one of the things that
in the IT industry,
in IT in particular, we didn't want to live with this uncertainty. And for me and my family, it was more about establishing ourselves, buying a house. We did all that. We did all that. Within 1.5 years of coming here, we bought ourselves a house, and we sort of had a mortgage like every other Aussie. And we started saving grain by grain into making whatever it is today. And then come 2009, we were in this discussion at home and just over a cup of coffee and stuff. And me and Shankar was talking and we were talking and said, why don't we do something? And in terms of a business opportunity. And Shankar had this job with IBM as well, but on a different side. And he had worked with various other IT companies. And so he was also one of the victims of layoff. So he knows that. But he was lucky enough to find something which kept him going. And then I said, I'm happy to quit my job and actually plunge into the business if we can work the numbers out.
Yep. So you'd go in together, but you would be the one who would quit.
So yes. Yeah. So because I was taking a risk, a fair amount of risk in running it, and also compromising on my income, I was the one to put in less investment into the business. Okay. So there was some deal, a give and take, benefit. A give and take, and we sort of worked this out. And then three of us decided, okay, why not we get in? And
so a third person,
Shankar, myself, and Uday, whom we had met while in Sydney.
Yep.
And he was also somebody who had migrated in 2004. We met as friends and through friends. And then the families have become, one today. It's so good to have a big family. Yeah. And, our business, we named it as IKEA Enterprises. And IKEA means in Tamil, it actually means unity and oneness. So we said we'll name it as IKEA Enterprises. And our wives, obviously, they played a big role. And today we have a group in our thing called the Pillars of IKEA. And the pillars are the wives. So all of us, anyway, they were like pretty supportive of the fact, and everyone was working. So they said, we will look after this side, the stable side of the business to keep the home running, and you guys take the plunge. So I took the plunge.
And this was what year was this? 2010.
2009, when we went around looking at so where to start? The question then was where to start? What business do we get into? And when we got in, we discussed, we looked at a lot of opportunities, fuel stations, say we didn't have to quit our job, employ somebody, put a student in, things like that. So many things cropped into our head. Nothing was working out because the investments were pretty huge.
Yeah, service station.
Yeah. So then we had to look at a business, one where we could rely on. And franchise model appeared to be the one best because it was something, the system was all there for you to follow. All you had to do was to follow a certain system. Yep. And if you're able to get it right, you can actually churn out the numbers. And if people are there in the business, they're obviously doing something right to be there. That's the whole logic. So we went into it and we went to the franchise expo in Sydney one Sunday, nice, beautiful Sunday afternoon.
I might have seen you there.
I don't know, 2010 it was.
Probably not.
And we saw a number of businesses. Pack and Send wasn't one of them, by the way. And then we looked at Quick Copy, we looked at fuel stations, we looked at 7-Eleven and so many other things. And we said, did we want to do a 24/7 business? Did we want a work-life balance?
So you had a criteria, you were trying to think of what's going to fit.
Basically, see, we are coming from a corporate environment where we are used to working a 9-to-5 job. Okay. Embassy World, I worked 4.5 days a week. Okay, that's something I cannot experience anywhere else. Okay, but the grass is always green on the other side.
Yeah,
and then you realize that it was the other grass that was greener.
Yeah,
but anyway, so then we were all used to that 9-to-5. We had a family, we had growing children, so we had to look after their needs as well. Which was more weekend was sports and running around, doing this, doing that. So you couldn't be going around doing your work on those days. So we wanted a good work-life balance. We wanted something that will give us the money to support us. And also, look at what we can do. And all we had was the confidence and the ability that we can service a customer. We can do what is expected of us. And we will do a genuinely good job. That's all.
Yeah. So how did you find Pack and Send? When did you settle on that?
So Shankar did some work around. And then he found this Pack and Send on the website and he came back and he said, I found this business called Pack and Send. And we have never seen one. We don't really know Pack and Send. What is it? Never heard of it. So we kind of went to the next step. Shankar lodged an online inquiry with Pack and Send. And then we had a meeting. And then, he said, I've done this meeting. We were a bit skeptical. So it was still not something 100%. That we thought will materialize. Yeah. we went into that. And then what happened was we came into the head office, we did our due diligence, and we found ourselves getting into the next steps.
Progressively moving through the process. Yeah.
So when we moved through the process, we then went up and met up a couple of store owners, one in Parramatta, one in Castle Hill, who were doing a low number. And then we also met a Greenfield owners of Pyrmont store. And when they...
Which Greenfield's a new store.
Yeah, that was a Greenfield, is a new store in Pyrmont. And then we sort of got them... Everyone was pretty excited about it. They seemed to be doing the business. Some of them were there in the business for long, and the newcomers were also pretty excited about it. So, and I said, well, logistics is something I have handled. I know the rules and regulations, and I'm pretty confident of what we can achieve. So if I'm able to work for somebody and, churn out my, meet their expectations or exceed their expectations, why not we do it in our own business?
Yeah.
So the kind of dream we had was different to the actual real picture, though. I must admit that. Okay. We got into the business. We then signed up with Pack and Send in July of 2010. And by November 2010, we were actually up and running with Greenfield store in North Sydney.
Yeah.
And the reason we chose North Sydney was
a new location.
Absolutely new location, a new store. We did some mistakes along the way, like we chose a rental property that probably was too high. We should not have gone for that. But there were certain things that we could have done better. But North Sydney was a place where we had a choice of the places were very, very limited for us. And that would meet the expectations of Pack and Send. It was not something like a retail business.
Yes.
So anyway, we got into it. And for the first few months, we found ourselves to be kind of, the business wasn't going on expected lines. But luckily, we had a spreadsheet that we've all put together with all our knowledge and said, what are the various what-if scenarios?
Yes.
This number drops, that number goes up, that number goes up. So we kind of did that. And then we found that the business was going down in a way that wasn't supporting me and Uday. And Uday had just lost his job with his market research agency. And he's from an engineering background. And he also volunteered to be with me in Pack and Send. So I had quit my job and Uday was here having lost his job. And we then got together at North Sydney and we said we will run it. And then I had the support of Shankar from outside, who was basically crunching the numbers and helping us in the outside world. But the ground reality was completely different. But anyway, we started doing it. But one thing we made sure was, even though we were bleeding, we never let our suppliers down. We still paid their bills and invoices on time. There was a bit of extra funding to be pumped in.
So how did you get through all that? So you pumped in some extra funding. And with marketing strategies to grow the business back, to get the turnover up and so on?
We tried all the marketing. The marketing wasn't really, for marketing, you needed the kind of funds on one side as well. And secondly, we went around doing some leaflet dropping, and which is very common. And then talking to people, getting just good meeting relationships, and things like that. Google reviews weren't really a big thing those days. Nobody really bothered about all those things. And then we led things and we said, okay, the only way we can probably turn this around is either two of us, it can't fund both of us, it can fund only one of us in the job, or we sort of buy another store. And
which is such an interesting, you told me a little bit of this before, and some interesting thought where you say you were bleeding money in many ways, can't support both of you, and one of the main solutions is to buy another store.
Correct.
Which is fascinating.
Yes.
So what was the thinking behind that?
The reason was, as I said, we had this analytical ability amongst us so to sort of sit down and put down these numbers. And the way was, how are we going to get the funding, if at all we go down that path, right? Because we were all exhausted. We had put everything into it in the first business. And Pack and Send actually met our expectations because it kind of, the money that had to be put into the business was something which we could afford. Unlike buying out a business, as I said, buying a 7-Eleven or buying something which we didn't want. But this met our expectations. But again, it was a question of the turnover. So if the revenue went up, then we knew we will be in a better position. but it was not something that was good. It was going to happen. We knew it was not a magic because it was going to be a gradual process.
Take time.
Okay. Yeah. So we had to get that mindset in. And me and Uday would travel by bus every single day in the evening and just discuss this. How do we pay this invoice tomorrow? And it was one of those very, very tense discussions we would have. And then the next morning, we would somehow leave it to the Almighty. It would work. If something happened, it just got paid. Pack and send were pretty flexible. So the royalties were a bit delayed, but it's okay. Those things happen.
They were supported.
They didn't support. It wasn't something for a support, but there was always that lag between the time.
But it was survivable.
So it was something we could manage.
Yeah,
we kind of worked. We worked with the cash flow. I said, okay, I'll go ahead and try and get the money out of the people first. Force them to pay, and that way we sorted. So we sort of did our trick. Then what happened? We were discussing, and we said, if we buy another store, we can probably, we know their revenue. We'll buy an existing store rather than a greenfield
store.
It's
got existing turnover and customers.
Yeah, existing turnover, existing customer base. And Crow's Nest was a good option because Crow's Nest had customers in North Sydney. And so we could sort of
work. So it was a great mix for you.
So it was, because North Sydney came in later and Crow's Nest had customers already in the North Sydney territory. And it so happened that Kathy and Brian, who owned the Crow's Nest, had put the store on market. And we went to the bank. We tried to get some funding, but we had very limited funding options. So when we knew what we were going to get and what we could manage, we actually put that offer on the table. And it worked.
Wow.
And it worked.
That was that divine intervention you were talking about.
It worked. We just got it. We moved in and I said, I'll handle Crow's Nest and let Uday handle North Sydney bit. And it so happened that, this business, North Sydney, Crow's Nest was already doing about $500,000 per annum. And so it was pretty good. It was one of the top stores in the country. And the business dipped a bit. And we were, again, feeling the pinch because when it dropped 20%, something we were not hoping will. We thought it'll only be a gradual climb. Again. But then we managed to stall the drop at a certain stage, and then sort of the graph started going up. For me, the good thing that happened then was I had the benefit of one of their old staff members decided to work with me and stick with me. So he had the knowledge of the customer base and the business from them. So there was a lot of things that I learned from him in terms of packaging skills because he was an expert packer. And that was something that Crow's Nest excelled in. So it was a good skill to learn. And at the same time, I just worried about the things. But things started gradually to look up a bit. So we were able to get the money. We were able to manage our living. Everything. The family was going fine. And then came the stage of the stress factors lessening, I would say.
So that was 2 stores. When did the third store come in?
The third store came in later. Third store, when this graph actually gradually started rising, and we saw there was some money to be made. We thought it was a good time for us to fall back and claw back all the losses of the previous years. So we said we will do that gradually rather than grab it all. So we had a long-term approach. And then we said, what if we get a third store now that we have a third partner? Shankar had lost his job with IT. And when he was there jobless, we said, why don't you help us? And he said, but again, it's the question of 3 people funding, 2 stores funding 3 people. And then we said, why don't we buy the third one? And Castle Hill came up. And he said, Castle Hill, close to home, let's explore that option. And I said, let's get something in our North Shore line or something like that, which will complement the business. But I don't know what happened, but we felt something. Castle Hill came our way. We felt the numbers, the asking price was something we could meet, and the business had actually grown from substandard to above average level. It was doing Way good.
Yes.
And so we said, even if the business drops 20%, we can't go wrong. We know the business model. Now we have the expertise. It's all a question of for us to take it and meet the expectations. And that's about it. So Shankar got in. He looked after Castle Hill. And then found his new staff members. I had my team and Uday had his team. And but one thing we didn't do was we didn't interfere into each other's business. So each one was just focused on growing that particular
Because that was
business.
my next question, is about what's the interaction between you? What do you do collectively and everything? But you run individual locations and you just don't get involved in each other's.
Collectively, our business runs as a whole group for all profit sharing and everything per sharing purposes.
Yep.
So it's a group. But when it comes to individual things, we are individually responsible because our customer interaction bases are known to all of us. I mean, if you need to know your customer very well because, and each one is different. Industrial customers and domestic customers were more in Castle Hill. I had more corporate customers, and North Sydney had a good blend of corporate versus this. So there was a lot of business to be made, and Uday was excellent at what he did with his customer base, and I was good. And I was looking after this side, so I knew what I was doing was right. And Shankar was good on his side of things. And there was no time for us to actually go into and visit each other or understand.
So
but we were talking constantly to understand how things are progressing. And then came the stage where Crow's Nest actually progressed to be the number 2 store. And I always wanted to take it to be the number 1, but I have not still managed it.
Well, not got there yet. So with all that success and those hard yards that you've done with that, what's made the difference, do you think? So what makes the difference at a Pack and Send store? Because you should know, living from those store that wasn't performing as well, but to where you're at now with 3 stores as a partnership, what are those things that make the difference?
The customer relationship management makes a huge difference. Individual customers, every customer has to be looked at and individually worked according to the requirements. There's a lot of with corporates, what I have noted is that each of the corporates have their own requirements to be fulfilled when it comes to their services. So for instance, a business has its own cost center. They have their own style of functioning. If we are able to adapt and produce the services, we all do the services, that's fine. But it's a question of, when I'm invoicing you, for instance, your company has a certain requirement. If you are able to meet your accounting requirements, your accounting is very happy with the thing. So if I'm a big company like, say, DHL or FedEx or whoever it is, and I have my own standard pattern of invoicing you, whether you like it or not, that's the pattern. That's the invoice that you will see. And you will have to meet my terms for me to work with you. With me, the advantage is I'm a small business. I'm here flexing myself to the needs of the customer.
So you're more customer focused.
It's more customer focused. That's one. The second thing is, it's more personal. It's no more the artificial thing. Customers still want that. They want to talk to you. They want to meet you. They want to put a face to the name. And we are not sending a third-party person or a contractor or somebody who misbehaves with them or something like that. It's more a personal relationship later on. Once you get into this business, it's all about how you develop that personal rapport and take it to the next level. Once you're able to do that with the team, with the extended team at office. So you meet one person in the office, the person introduces you to the next person. And then you talk. There's a lot of things you can talk about. It doesn't necessarily have to be the business. And then you spread your wings. That's what makes that difference. So the thing, it's all about staying customer focused, meeting the expectations and not wasting their time. You've got to also be mindful of their time and stuff like that, and what interests them and what doesn't interest them. And so it's just not our interest that matters. It's mutual interest. And that's what we work at.
That's what makes it happen.
So we ask very clear questions. What is expected of them? We get them to put it down in writing, and we do not take too long to answer their question. That's something that people want these days, is a quick turnaround.
Yeah, people are, we've got very used to having very quick responses.
Everybody wants,
We've lost a lot of patience.
I've sent a message, I'm still waiting for a response.
Yeah.
And you don't want that 5-hour turnaround or a 6-hour turnaround.
No.
As long as somebody is on top of it, responding to an email, oh, Mike, that was quick. They love it. And then you pick up the phone, you ask them that question. And once they know you are asking the right questions, they know that you know your job. If you don't know what product you're selling, it's very different.
It's very obvious to them.
Correct. Yeah. And because we are a reseller at Pack and Send of freight industry as a whole, there are a lot of what we are able to offer is not something that a person can go and get it themselves. Why should they come to Pack and Send? If you ask me, it is because Pack and Send are able to offer multiple services under one roof. You might be, as an business, you might have a certain volume of business, and you can go to one carrier to open an account. But if you come to me, you don't have to open an account. All you do is you're dealing with Pack and Send, and it doesn't matter to you. I'm using multiple carriers to get your job done.
Yeah, as long as you provide the solution.
So correct. So you don't have to break your heads with the account managers of 10 different carriers. All you're doing is talking to me, and your job is getting done.
You're done. Excellent.
And it's all about meeting that small needs of the customer. And don't look at a customer as a $10 customer or a $1,000 customer. I always keep saying that. Everyone is equally important. The first job is always the small one. Have a long-term vision. Have a long-term focus. You will get it right. You will see that it actually ends up into big things. So for me, small customers, one-time jobs have actually today have become big.
Excellent. Well, that's an excellent way to finish it. And I hope you do get that Crow's Nest #1 at some point soon, Raman. I wish you all the best for that.
That's what I'm waiting for.
And thanks so much for joining us on the podcast, mate.
Thank you so much.
And that's it for another episode of the Franchise Everything podcast. Please, again, if you really like this sort of content, like, share, subscribe, do all that sort of stuff to help us get this out there further into the marketplace. And I look forward to catching you in the next one soon.